Hello and welcome to the WIHS Journal, Public Affairs from 104.9 FM. I'm Paul Kretschmer. Today, Marc Fitch from the Yankee Institute is going to talk about the special sessions coming up, whether they'll get stuff done or whether they'll just pass time.
Well, with the special sessions, they're only going to call them for things that they know are going to pass. So if there's going to be a big fight or something like that, if there's disagreement between the parties, they're probably not going to call it. So, and what they're looking at for this upcoming session, I guess, who knows when, within the next week or so, is to pass the very few bills that actually were voted out of committee before the shutdown. So, a couple potential things. A sexual harassment thing on college campuses. There's some votes coming up on block grants for Medicaid funds and things like that. They'll probably all be non-controversial issues. Obviously, we had the vote on the police accountability bill, and there are some problems with that bill, but they're not willing to come back to try to fix them. It's something that could be done during the next legislative session because, frankly, most of the police accountability bill doesn't go into effect for another year or so, there's no real rush there. But it is kind of an interesting dynamic in that, the governor has been granted, emergency powers to continue operating the government as he has been, yet the legislature is still doing things. It is still holding hearings, it's holding informational hearings and listening sessions and things like that, all online. But when push comes to shove and they want to get something done, they can go in and vote. So it's kind of an interesting dynamic, I think.
I noticed that right after the police accountability measure was passed, that the union representing the troopers did speak right up and said, "You can't do that because that contravenes our contract." And the almost immediate response after that from Governor Lamont was, well, yes, they may actually have a point there, but it doesn't go into effect for a while now, and I think we'll be able to take care of it at the beginning of next year, and so we don't really have to worry about it.
Well, yeah, and the police union has filed suit over the bill. I don't know how that's going to play out. I mean, the legislature can make laws, and I think the current police contract is up in 2023 for state police. So maybe it'll just take effect after that. Who knows? But their big sticking point for that was the FOI exemption, the Freedom of Information exemption in the police union contract, which Yankee Institute was the first to point out back when that contract came up for a vote. It didn't stop. What's amazing is it didn't stop Democratic lawmakers from passing that, voting on to ratify that contract back then, but all of a sudden now it's a big deal. So you can see how public pressure at a national level can trickle down to state issues really quickly.
Yeah. As far as the officers union, the troopers union filing a lawsuit, could that be considered kind of a pro forma measure right now, like a placeholder position, so that if they need to do something or feel they need to do something later, then they've already got that in the hopper in the justice system and can amend or ask for changes in it before the courts if that becomes necessary?
I don't know the ins and outs of how that would play out legally, in the court system. So I think they just want it gone, and the quickest way to do that is to file the lawsuit, and that forces the state to have to defend it. And of the problems in the bill, to my mind, that's not one of them.
Right? Yeah.
There are other problems, but that's not it. And
Okay.
I don't think they should be fighting so vociferously against transparency. Regardless of whatever else is happening in the country, and the issues between police and the public, that's not the issue that they should be fighting. There's a couple other problems in the bill that need rectifying, but that's not one of them. If anything, that was a win. That's a good thing for the people of Connecticut, and it should be supported. These kind of FOI exemptions, these kind of this contract language that can override state law should just be out of contracts completely. Like, they shouldn't be able to do that. They shouldn't be able to supersede law. So I think that's just kind of right-sizing the union to its job as government employees. You are subject to freedom of information. That's what you get when you sign up. If you don't like it, well, you shouldn't be able to write that out of your job description in a contract.
Which reminds me of another situation that's arisen in the last day or so, which is the situation where the person who was heading up the Connecticut partnership has now indicated that she was going to sue Mrs. Dalio. She was going to sue the governor. She was going to sue the legislative leaders, and she was going to sue all the other members of the board that was supposed to govern that, because she feels that under the circumstances within which she was discharged, her reputation was hurt, her future job possibilities were hurt, and she feels like her previous employer also had something to do with that. Does that have any particular impact on what's going on in state government right now, or is that another headline leading sideshow that maybe gets my attention for a day, but which should then be put down on the table and something else much more significantly be taken up?
I think that's going to end up being another legal sideshow. She was certainly unceremoniously dumped from the whole Dalio partnership for Connecticut. And that the partnership was going down in flames anyway. And frankly, at this point, the state doesn't have the money to back it to begin with. But obviously, you should try to treat your people a little better. But whether or not she has a case is just one more kind of how should I say, like, fallout. It's just more fallout from the whole Dalio situation. And this is what happens when you try to ram through these agendas, these issues, without having proper vetting and without actually bringing this to the front for the people. The Dalio situation was another one where they were going to be partially exempt from freedom of information requests, and that essentially that was a giant nail in the coffin for them. It sounded nice. It sounded great. The Dalio Foundation is going to give a bunch of money to help schools and everything like that. But because they wanted that exemption from disclosure laws, it not only turned some Democrats against the idea, but it also turns the media against the idea, because the media really tries to safeguard freedom of information disclosure and kind of don't want to, get on their bad side by trying to get around it. And it's something that we've been seeing more and more of. When Governor Lamont announced his reopening committee, people were exempt from the freedom of information, request. Then, he got rid of the committee altogether and went with a private consulting firm out of Boston, and you can't FOI them at all. So the governor has, he's giving updates every single day, and that's great and everything like that, but he does seem to have a little bit of an issue when it comes to, transparency and freedom of information at the government level. Thank you once again, as always, for the generosity of your time, Marc Fitch. I appreciate very much talking to you, and people can once again contact you by going to Marc at yankeeinstitute.org. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, Paul. Always a pleasure. Once again, Marc Fitch is the investigative reporter for the Yankee Institute for Public Policy in Hartford. For further information, call us at 860-346-1049, 860-346-1049. The opinions expressed are those of the participants, not necessarily those of the staff or management of this station. I'm Paul Kretschmer on the WIHS Journal, Public Affairs from WIHS.